Christmas dinner, my daughter pointed at the long oak table I had polished with lemon oil 8 years earlier, in the house my husband and I still owned, and said, "Mum, not there. Family sits here." She said it softly. That was the cruelty of it. Not loud enough to be called a scene, not sharp enough for anyone else to feel responsible, just soft enough that every person in that room could pretend they had not heard it clearly. But I heard it. Her husband heard it. His parents heard it. My granddaughter Lily heard it so clearly that the dinner roll in her hand stayed halfway between the basket and her plate. And I stood there in my good green dress beside the roast I had cooked for 11 hours, holding the carving fork my late husband had used every Christmas for 46 years. I did not ask my daughter to repeat herself. I did not embarrass her. I did not cry in front of the pastor's wife, or Brent's parents, or the two people from his office who were suddenly important enough to take seats at my family table. I looked once at the folding tray table Claire had placed near the kitchen door. One chair, one paper napkin, no glass, no name card. Then I set the carving knife down, put my oven mitts back on, lifted the whole roasting pan with both hands, and walked out through the side door. Behind me, my daughter said, "Mom, don't be dramatic." I stopped with the roast in my hands and turned back. "I'm not being dramatic, Claire," I said. "I'm being accurate." Then I carried Christmas dinner to my car. That night, she called 14 times. On the 15th call, her voice was shaking in a way I had not heard since she was 17, and backed into the mailbox. "Mum," she whispered, "Lily said there was an envelope. Please tell me you didn't mean what you wrote inside it." I looked at the roast cooling on my kitchen counter. I looked at the cream envelope I had almost handed her after dessert. And I said, calmly, "Claire, I didn't write that envelope after dinner. I brought it with me." Welcome back to her calm revenge, where the woman they seat by the kitchen door is often the one holding the deed, the recipe, and the truth. If you have ever been treated like the help by people living comfortably on your kindness, stay with me. This is not a story about a roast. It is a story about the moment a mother finally stopped feeding a room that had forgotten she belonged in it. My name is Margaret Ellis. I am 71 years old. I worked 29 years in the county records office, where I learned that paper remembers what people conveniently forget. I know deeds. I know tax records. I know signatures. And I know the difference between a promise and a document that can stand up in a courtroom. My family forgot that about me. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was believing my silence meant I did not see what was happening. Let me tell you where this really starts, because the roast was never just food. My husband Thomas started that tradition, our first Christmas married. We were 23, broke, and living in a one-bedroom apartment with heat that rattled. Still, he came home from the butcher carrying a roast wrapped in brown paper like treasure. "Maggie," he said, "someday we'll have a house full of people, and this will be the smell that calls them home." He was right. For 46 Christmases, that roast sat at the center of our table. Garlic, rosemary, onions softening in butter. Thomas carved it standing, sleeves rolled, glasses sliding down his nose. But he had one rule. The first slice went to whoever looked most left out. That was Thomas's whole heart. He noticed the edge of the room, the quiet child, the divorced cousin, the neighbor whose sons had not called. He would find the person holding themselves together with both hands and give them the first slice, like a blessing. "Family," he used to say, "is not who fits at the table. Family is who you make room for." I wish I had known how much that sentence would cost me later. Thomas died 3 years before that Christmas. A quiet stroke in the garden, one hand still wrapped around the rake handle. People called it peaceful, but they did not have to live in the house afterward. The first Christmas, without him, I almost did not make the roast. I took the old blue enamel pan down, touched the chipped handle, and sat right down on the kitchen floor. Then my granddaughter Lily called. Grandma, she said, Christmas won't smell right without it. So I made it. I made it with swollen hands and tears in the gravy. I set it on the table, and my daughter Claire hugged me hard and said, "You saved Christmas, Mom." I remembered that later. People should be careful with the sentences they say when they still need you. Claire is my only child. I loved her through ear infections, prom dresses, slammed doors, a bad first marriage, and the tired years when she tried to pretend she was not disappointed by her own life. Then she married Brent. Brent liked the word practical. He used it the way other people use a shield. "Let's be practical, Margaret." That was what he said when he wanted me to pay for Lily's summer program, when the Maple Ridge furnace bill landed in my mailbox, and when he explained why Claire should host Christmas in their home because my little ranch was less suited for entertaining. That phrase became his way of making selfishness sound mature. 8 years before that Christmas, Claire and Brent were drowning. His consulting work had slowed. Claire's hours at the dental office had been cut. Their landlord wanted to sell. Lily was 13, old enough to understand panic and young enough to blame herself. Claire came to my kitchen one rainy Tuesday and cried into a dish towel. "Mom, we just need time," she said. 6 months, maybe a year. Lily cannot change schools again. Thomas and I owned a small house on Maple Ridge. Plain 2-story, good porch, big dining room. We had bought it as a rental, but Thomas always said it would be Claire's safety net if she ever needed one. Not a prize. A net. So we let them move in. No market rent, no formal lease. Just a mother and father saying, "Get steady, breathe, pay what you can." Thomas and I paid the taxes, the insurance, the roof, the water heater, and later, half the kitchen cabinets Brent said were necessary for his video calls. After Thomas died, I kept paying, quietly, automatically, like love was another bill due on the first. At first, Claire said thank you. Then she said it less. Then Maple Ridge became our house when she spoke to friends. Then the house when she spoke to me. Then, somewhere along the way, she began behaving as if my name on the deed was an embarrassing little technicality. That is something people do when they benefit from your silence. First they are grateful, then they are comfortable, then they are offended by the reminder that the gift was a gift. I saw it happening. I told myself Claire was stressed, Brent was proud, Lily needed peace, and Thomas would want me to be generous. Every excuse sounded like kindness at the time. Now I know some excuses are just fear dressed in good manners. The cream envelope began with Thomas. About 6 months before that Christmas, I found a note in his old desk. Not a dramatic letter. Thomas was not dramatic. Just a folded yellow page in the drawer where he kept warranties and spare keys. "Maggie, if Maple Ridge ever becomes Claire's, make sure Lily is protected. A house can shelter a family or divide one. Do it clean. Do it in writing. Don't let love be the only lock on the door." I sat with that note for a long time. Then I called Helen Price. Helen was my attorney and, more importantly, one of the few women I knew who could make a greedy man sweat by adjusting her glasses. She drew up a family trust agreement. It would not hand the house to Brent. It would not allow Claire to borrow against it in a panic. It would protect Lily's future interest, allow Claire to live there under clear terms, and keep Maple Ridge from becoming a weapon in anyone's marriage. It was generous. It was also careful. Thomas would have approved. I decided to give Claire the papers at Christmas. It felt right. The house, the roast, the family gathered. I imagined reading Thomas's note after dessert, Claire crying for the right reason, Lily hugging me, and Brent, for once, having nothing practical to say. That was the version of Christmas I carried into the house. Hope makes fools of us, yes, but sometimes hope is just love arriving without armor. Christmas morning, I woke before dawn. I tied my apron over my green dress. The one Thomas used to say made me look like I had forgiven the world. I browned the roast until the windows fogged. I packed the carrots separately, the potatoes in a covered dish, and the gravy base in a jar wrapped with a towel. I slipped the cream envelope into the side pocket of my purse. Before I left, I touched Thomas's picture on the shelf. Big day, I told him. We're giving them the house properly. I drove to Maple Ridge with the roast buckled in the passenger seat. Because some traditions deserve a seatbelt. The house looked beautiful. White lights on the bushes, wreath on the door, a wooden sign on the porch that said, "Gather." I stared at that word while balancing the roasting pan against my hip. Gather. Some houses tell the truth better than the people inside them. Brent opened the door wearing a red sweater and the polished smile he used when someone useful had arrived. "Margaret," he said. "Great, kitchen's through there." Not "Merry Christmas." Not "Let me take that." Kitchen's through there. Claire was in the kitchen, arranging sprigs of thyme on a platter like she was styling a magazine cover. She kissed the air near my cheek. "Oh, good," she said. "You brought it hot." "I brought it cooked," I said. "It needs to rest." "Perfect. We're doing photos before dinner, so just keep it covered until the table shot." The table shot. Not the blessing. Not the meal. The shot. That was the first little warning bell. The second was the place cards. I saw them lined up on the sideboard, gold ink on cream paper. Brent's parents, Brent's sister, 2 people from his office, the pastor and his wife. A couple from the neighborhood, Claire, Brent, Lily. No Margaret. No Mom. No Grandma. I touched my purse where the envelope sat and told myself she simply had not finished. That is how a woman helps people hurt her. She keeps providing innocent explanations long after the evidence has stopped deserving them. For the next 2 hours, I worked. I reheated potatoes. I sliced oranges for the salad. I found the carving fork under plastic straws. I wiped gravy from the edge of a bowl and washed a platter. Brent's mother said had water spots. I took my shoes off for 10 minutes, then put them back on, when Elaine wandered in and looked at my stockings like she had found a mistake. Lily came into the kitchen and hugged me from behind. "Grandma," she whispered, "it smells like Grandpa." That almost broke me. She looked toward the dining room. "Where are you sitting?" "I'm sure your mother has a plan," I said. Lily frowned. "That's what I'm afraid of." At 4 o'clock, the guests gathered. Candles lit, glasses filled. The roast rested under foil, perfect and fragrant, waiting for the old ceremony. For 46 years, Thomas had carved that roast at the table. After he died, I took over. Not because I wanted attention, because tradition is how we keep the dead from disappearing too quickly. I carried the pan in with both hands. Conversation softened when the smell reached the room. Even Howard, Brent's father, said, "Now that is something." For one bright second, I felt Thomas beside me. Then I saw the chairs. 12 places at the dining table. 12 cards. 12 glasses. 12 cloth napkins folded like little crowns. Near the kitchen door, half hidden behind a poinsettia, there was a folding tray table. 1 chair. 1 paper napkin. No glass. No card. I knew. Still, I gave my daughter one last chance. "Claire," I said quietly, "where am I?" She looked at the tray table, then at the guests, then back at me. Her cheeks pinked, but her voice stayed light. "Oh, Mom, you don't mind, do you? We needed to keep the main table for family. There are sentences that do not become real until everyone hears them. This one became real immediately." Lily stood halfway up. "Mum." Claire gave her a look. "Sit down." I looked at my daughter. "For family?" "You know what I mean," Claire said, lowering her voice, but not enough. "Brent's parents came all this way. His work friends are here. We only had 12 proper settings. You're in and out of the kitchen anyway." In and out of the kitchen. That was the moment the whole room showed me its spine. Howard studied his wine. Elaine adjusted her bracelet. The pastor's wife looked at the centerpiece. Brent gave a small, reasonable shrug, as if the world had arranged itself this way, and he was merely reporting it. "Margaret," he said, "let's be practical. It's just seating." There it was. Practical. I looked at the tray table again, at the paper napkin, at the little chair angled toward the swinging kitchen door. I looked at the roast in my hands. 11 hours of work. 46 years of memory. Thomas's tradition. The envelope in my purse. The house under my name. And I understood something with a sadness so clean, it almost felt like peace. Claire had not forgotten to make room for me. She had decided the room I deserved. Lily stood fully now. Grandma can have my seat. Lily, Claire hissed, sit down. No, Lily said. This is awful. Nobody else moved. Remember that. Public cruelty almost always has an audience, and the audience loves to pretend silence is neutral. It is not. Silence is a place card too. I could have reached into my purse right then and pulled out the cream envelope. I could have said, "Interesting. I came here to give you protected rights to the house you are hosting this dinner in." Part of me wanted to. But then I thought of Thomas. First slice to whoever looks most left out. And for the first time in my life at a Christmas table, the person left out was me. So I chose myself. I set the roasting pan on the sideboard. I removed the foil. The smell rose rich and warm into that silent room. I picked up the carving knife, then set it down. Claire blinked. "Mom?" I slid on the oven mitts. "What are you doing?" Brent asked. I lifted the roast. "If family sits here," I said gently, "then Christmas dinner can sit with me." No one laughed. I walked through the kitchen with the roast in my hands. Behind me, Claire said, "Mum, don't be dramatic." I stopped at the side door. "I'm not being dramatic, Claire. I'm being accurate." Then I left. Now, if you think the roast was the part that changed everything, you are only half right. The roast started it. The envelope finished it. The cold hit my face like mercy. I carried that pan down the porch steps, past the gather sign, and set it carefully in the back seat on the towels I keep for groceries. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from recognition. Sometimes your heart does not break in the moment somebody hurts you. Sometimes it breaks when you finally admit they knew exactly what they were doing. I drove 3 blocks and pulled over under a street lamp outside the closed pharmacy. I cried there. I am not ashamed of that. A woman can be strong and still need a minute with her hands on the steering wheel. I cried because I had walked into that house carrying Christmas dinner and generational security. I had walked in ready to give my daughter something Thomas and I had worked decades to protect. And before I could give it to her, she showed me what she thought I was worth when she believed there was nothing left to gain. My phone started buzzing. Claire. Then Brent. Then Claire again. Then Lily. I answered Lily. "Grandma," she sobbed, "where are you?" "I'm all right." "I'm so sorry. I told Mom it was wrong. I told her." "I know you did, sweetheart. They're saying you ruined Christmas." I looked at the roast in the back seat and almost laughed. "No, honey, I rescued my part of it. Can I come over?" I looked at the clock. Christmas evening. My granddaughter, in a house full of people who had just taught her something ugly about belonging. "Yes," I said, "bring a sweater." At home, I put the roast back in the oven and set 2 places. Then 4, because Thomas had trained me well. Mrs. Alvarez came over with a pie. Mr. Porter stopped by with a card and stayed when I told him the roast was ready. Lily arrived red-eyed and furious, still in her Christmas dress. By 7:15, 6 people sat at my little table. No place cards, no hierarchy, no firm people. I carved the first slice for Mrs. Alvarez because she looked most left out. It was the warmest Christmas dinner I had known since Thomas died. That is what Claire did not understand. You cannot ruin Christmas by removing yourself from disrespect. Sometimes that is how Christmas finally finds the right room. Around 9, after dishes were stacked and Lily had fallen asleep on my couch under Thomas's old quilt, I opened my purse and took out the cream envelope. For a long time, I just looked at Claire's name written in my careful hand. Then I opened it. Inside was Thomas's note. Helen's trust agreement. My handwritten card. Claire, I had written, your father wanted this house to be a shelter, not a weapon. I hope you remember that family is not proven by who owns the table, but by who makes room at it. There are sentences, a woman writes, before she knows they are for herself. I did not tear the papers. I did not make a rash decision with a wounded heart. Property deserves a cool head. But I took a pen and wrote one word across the front of the envelope. Paused. Not cancelled. Paused. That was more mercy than my daughter had earned, and less than she expected. The 15th call came at 10:38. I answered because I was ready. Mom, Claire whispered. Lily said there was an envelope. Please tell me you didn't mean what you wrote in it. What envelope? I asked, though I knew. The one you brought. Lily said you had papers. She said you were going to give us something important. So Lily had told them not to betray me. She had probably shouted it while defending me, young and honest and angry enough to throw truth like a plate. I brought an envelope, I said. What was in it? A Christmas gift. What kind of gift? The kind you make room for. Mum, stop talking like that. Just tell me. So I told her. Calmly, clearly. No tears, no punishment in my voice. I told her about Thomas's note, the trust, Helen's agreement, and my plan to protect Maple Ridge so she could live there securely, while Lily could never be pushed out by debt. Divorce, pride, or panic. I told her I had planned to give it after dinner, because Thomas believed good news belonged at a full table. The line went silent. Then Claire said, so quietly I almost missed it. You were giving us the house? No, I said. I was protecting the house for you. There is a difference. Another silence. Then I heard Brent in the background. Ask if she signed it. That told me more than any apology could have. Claire came back. Had you signed it? No. She exhaled. Relief, panic, calculation, all in one breath. Mom, she said, you can't punish us over a seating mistake. There it was, the first draft of the family story. A seating mistake. Claire, I said, a mistake is forgetting cranberry sauce. A mistake is burning rolls. Looking at your mother and saying family sits here while pointing her toward a tray table is not a mistake. It is a statement. I was stressed. I know. Everyone was watching. I know. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I closed my eyes. That sentence has carried more cruelty through families than almost any other. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, as if the wound lives in the hearing instead of the speaking. What did you mean? I asked. She did not answer. That was the first honest thing she had done all night. Brent took the phone. Margaret, he said, using his smoothest voice, let's be practical. There it was again. I looked at Thomas's picture and almost smiled. Please do, I said. We should not make decisions about real estate during an emotional moment. You are right. That caught him off guard. Good. So tomorrow, I said, I will call Helen, and we will make decisions about real estate during business hours. He went quiet. Then he said, This is our home. Your home, I said, is still my property. That's a technicality. No, Brent, it is a deed. If you have ever watched a man discover that the quiet woman in the room kept the documents, you know there is a special silence after that. He tried again. Do you really want to destabilize your daughter over one uncomfortable dinner? No, I said. I wanted to stabilize her for life. Then she told me where I belonged. I hung up gently. The next morning, Claire's version started traveling. By noon, my sister Ruth called from Ohio. Margaret, did you really walk out with the roast because there weren't enough chairs? I asked. Is that what she said? She said you embarrassed her in front of everyone over a seating mix-up. I told Ruth the exact words. Family sits here. Ruth went quiet. That happened all day. People called carrying Claire's story and hung up carrying mine. Some believed me. Some did not. Age teaches you not to chase every jury. Anyone determined to misunderstand you will outrun every explanation you offer. But then Brent made the mistake that turned my sadness into paperwork. At 3 o'clock the day after Christmas, an email arrived from an attorney I did not know. Polite language, concerned tone, copied to Claire and Brent. It referred to recent emotional volatility, retaliatory housing threats, and the family's interest in preserving residential stability. It suggested mediation regarding Maple Ridge. I read it twice. Then I put on lipstick. There are moments in a woman's life when lipstick is not vanity. It is armor. I called Helen Price. She answered on the second ring. Merry Christmas, Margaret. I need to unpause something. Helen sighed. What did they do? I told her everything. Not the emotional version, the factual one, the statement, the tray table, the roast, the calls, the attorney email. Brent asking whether I had signed. Helen was quiet until I finished. Then she said, Good, you did not sign. No. Good, do not respond to that, lawyer. Forward me the email. And Margaret? Yes? Change the locks on your file cabinet if Claire has a key to your house. I did it that afternoon. Not because I wanted to believe my daughter would steal from me, because I had spent too many years saying she would never, about things she eventually did. By Friday, Claire and Brent received a formal notice. Not an eviction. I was not trying to throw Lily into chaos. I am not a cruel woman, but I am not a careless one anymore either. The notice clarified ownership and occupancy terms. Maple Ridge belonged to me. Their previous informal arrangement was ending. They had two choices. They could sign a proper 12-month lease at below-market rent, maintain the property, carry renter's insurance, and acknowledge in writing that they had no ownership interest. Or they could vacate by spring. Mercy and boundaries in the same envelope. The first apology came that evening. It was not a real one. Claire showed up with Brent, which meant she wanted backup. Lily came too, which meant God still loved me enough to send a witness. I had set the cream envelope on the kitchen table beside a folder of documents. The blue enamel roasting pan sat washed on the counter, chipped at the handles, still more faithful than half the people who had eaten from it. Claire looked pale. Brent looked practical. Lily looked exhausted. Mom, Claire began, this has gotten out of control. No, I said. It has gotten into writing. Brent sat without being invited. We're willing to apologize for making you feel excluded. Making me feel. That tiny little escape hatch. I looked at Claire. Is that your apology too? She swallowed. I'm sorry you felt hurt. There it was. The apology that leaves the knife in and asks the wound to take responsibility. I folded my hands. Claire, I did not come here for a sentence you found in a customer service email. Her face flushed. What do you want from me? The truth. Brent leaned forward. The truth is there were practical seating limitations. I turned to him. Brent, you are living in a house you do not own, discussing practical limitations with the woman who chose not to charge you market rent for 8 years. Choose your next words carefully. His mouth closed. Small victories are still victories. I opened the folder. This is the deed to Maple Ridge, my name. This is the tax record, paid by me. This is the insurance, paid by me. This is the roof invoice from 2021. Paid by me. This is the furnace. Paid by me. This is the cabinet check, Thomas wrote before he died. Paid by him. I touched the cream envelope. And this was your Christmas gift. Claire stared at it. I took out the card and read it aloud. When I reached the line about family making room at the table, Lily began to cry. Claire looked down. Brent stared at the wall, like the wall owed him an answer. Then I laid the unsigned trust agreement on the table. I came to Christmas dinner prepared to protect that house for you, I said. Not because you had earned it, because I loved you, because your father loved you, Because I wanted Lily to have roots. And before I could give it to you, you showed me what happens when you feel secure enough to be honest. Claire whispered, Mom, I'm sorry. I waited. She added, but taking the house away is extreme. And there it was, the leash on the apology. I slid the papers back toward myself. I am not taking away your house, Claire. I am refusing to give you mine. The room went quiet. That sentence landed harder than any speech I could have made. Brent stood. This is manipulation. Lily stood too. No, Dad. What you and Mum did was manipulation. Grandma is just the first person to bring paperwork. I will remember that sentence on my deathbed. Brent looked at Claire, waiting for her to correct their daughter. Claire did not. Not because she had fully changed, not yet, but because truth had finally entered the room, and even she could not pretend it had not. She did not sign that night. That matters. In the first version of this story, the one people like to imagine, the daughter realizes everything at the kitchen table, falls into her mother's arms, and becomes gentle by dessert. Real life is slower. Pride does not die in one conversation. Sometimes it just limps into the next room and looks for new shoes. For 3 weeks, Claire was cold. She sent short texts about the lease. Brent's attorney sent another letter. Helen answered with 6 pages of facts and a copy of the deed. That ended the legal poetry quickly. Then something happened I did not expect. Lily stopped going home on weekends. She stayed with me after classes, studied at my kitchen table, learned to make gravy, and told her mother she needed quiet. Claire called me one Thursday evening. Is Lily there? Yes. She barely talks to me. I waited. Claire's voice cracked. She said she doesn't like who I become around Brent's parents. That was not my wound to bandage. She is telling you something, I said. I know. Then listen, before she has to leave to be heard. Claire hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, she came to my house alone. No Brent. No folder. No performance. She looked smaller than she had at Christmas. Not weaker, less decorated. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I had written, paused across the envelope. For a long minute, she looked at her hands. Then she said, I knew what I was doing. That was the first real sentence. I did not interrupt it. I knew there wasn't a place for you at the table, she said. I knew earlier that day. Brent said it would be easier if you were near the kitchen because you'd be helping anyway. I told myself you wouldn't care because you never make things difficult. She wiped her face. And when I said family sits here, I heard it. I heard how it sounded. I wanted to take it back before the sentence was finished. But everyone was looking, and I chose the room over you. There it was. Not stress. Not seating. Not a misunderstanding. The truth. Claire kept going. I have been telling people Maple Ridge is ours because I am ashamed that it isn't. I thought if it was finally in my name, I would stop feeling like my life was borrowed. Brent kept saying, it was practical, that you wanted to give it anyway, that we should formalize things before taxes or health issues made it complicated. She looked at me then. I let him make your generosity sound like unfinished business. That one hurt because it was accurate. I'm sorry, Mom, not because of the house, not because of the lease. I am sorry because you came to feed us, and I treated you like you were not one of us. A real apology does not ask to be rewarded immediately. This one did not. So I accepted it. Not with a hug. Not yet. I was not ready to perform forgiveness so she could feel done. I reached across the table and touched her hand once. Thank you for telling the truth. She cried harder then. Sometimes the truth is the first slice. The lease was signed the following Monday. 12 months. Below market rent. Clear responsibilities. Written acknowledgement that Maple Ridge belonged to me and that no ownership interest existed. Brent signed with the face of a man swallowing a lemon whole. Claire signed quietly. Then I signed. Not because everything was repaired, because a house needs rules even while hearts are healing. Spring came slowly. The rent arrived on the first of each month. Repairs were made without me chasing. Claire and I began lunch once a month. Sometimes we talked about real things. Sometimes we talked about soup, because real things need rest between them. Brent remained polite and cool. That was fine. Not everyone deserves access to your warmth. Polite is enough for some people. In April, I went back to Helen. I did not revive the original trust agreement. That version belonged to the woman who still believed love could protect itself without locks. Instead, Helen helped me create a new plan. Maple Ridge would remain mine for the rest of my life. After that, it would go into a protected trust for Lily. Claire could continue living there under fair terms if she respected the property and the agreement. Brent could not sell it, borrow against it, mortgage it, or turn shelter into leverage. When I told Claire, she did not argue. A year earlier, she would have. Even 3 months earlier, she might have. But that day, she simply nodded. Dad would have liked Lily protected, she said. Yes, I told her. He would have liked you protected too, but not from consequences. She accepted that. That is how I knew something had shifted. Not fixed. Shifted. There is a difference. The roast pan stayed with me. That may sound small, but families are held together by objects more than they admit. A pan, a quilt, a ring, a chair. The things that carry our repeated promises. In November, Claire called. Are you coming for Christmas? She asked. That depends. On what? On whether there is a chair. She was quiet. Then she said, There will always be a chair for you. I believed she meant it. I also knew, meaning it once, is not the same as building a life around it. Good, I said. But this year, Christmas is at my house. Oh. No place cards, no work guests, no performance. Anyone who is hungry and kind can come. And if there are more people than chairs, I will sit on the piano bench before I put one guest near the kitchen door. Claire laughed once through tears. All right, she said. So that is what we did. The next Christmas came anyway, brave and unreasonable, asking us to try again. Lily chopped carrots. Claire brought homemade rolls, uneven and a little dense, which made me love them more. Mrs. Alvarez brought pie. Ruth drove in from Ohio with a casserole and opinions. Brent arrived with flowers, and the careful face of a man who understood charm no longer worked here. There were no place cards. When we ran short, Lily took a stool and Brent ended up near the kitchen door. I did not make a joke of it. Consequence does not need decorations. Before I carved, Claire stood. Her hands were shaking. Last Christmas, she said, I forgot what this table means. I acted like family was something to arrange for appearances. My mother reminded me, fairly, that family is who you make room for. I am sorry for the room I did not make. It was not perfect. Real apologies have seams. But it was public, clear, and did not blame my feelings, so I accepted it. Then I carved the roast. The first slice went to Mr. Porter, who had lost his brother that fall, and had been pretending all evening that he was fine. Thomas would have approved. People have asked, because stories travel in families no matter how careful you are, whether taking the roast and leaving was petty. Maybe it looked that way from the outside. An old woman walking out with the main course. A ruined dinner. A dramatic Christmas. But it was never about the roast. The roast was the last thing I had brought to a table where I was willing to be invisible. When I took it back, I took back the labor, the tradition, the memory, and the habit of feeding people who would not feed my dignity in return. I took back my chair. I took back my house. I took back the right to stop calling disrespect a misunderstanding just because the person doing it shared my blood. Claire and I are better now. Not simple, better. We still have lunch. Sometimes she tells the truth faster than she used to. Sometimes she catches herself performing and stops. Brent still says practical now and then, but not to me. Not anymore. Once, when he tried it over a repair bill, I smiled and said, "You're right, Brent. Let's be practical. Send it to the person living in the house." He paid it. Lily is learning the roast recipe. She writes down every step like evidence. Garlic first, rosemary after, rest before carving, first slice to whoever looks most left out. Maple Ridge is maintained, the taxes are paid, the trust is clear. No one calls the deed a technicality anymore. And every Christmas, when the kitchen fills with garlic and rosemary, I think of Thomas standing at the table with his carving knife, looking for the person on the edge. For years, I thought love meant giving the first slice away no matter what. Now I know better. Sometimes, love means noticing when you are the one left out. Sometimes, dignity means taking the roast and going home. And sometimes, the most important seat at the table is the one you finally stop begging for. That is my story. One Christmas dinner, one sentence, one roast carried through the cold, and one mother who remembered that family is not the people who place you where it is convenient. Family is the people who make room because your presence matters. If this reminded you of a table where you were made to feel small, hear me clearly. You are not required to keep feeding a room that starves your spirit. You are not required to make yourself useful enough to be loved. And you are not required to hand over your peace, your property, or your traditions to people who only value them after they learn what they cost. Take back what is yours. Sit where you are honored. And never confuse being needed with being cherished. Drop a comment if you have ever had to choose dignity over tradition. Subscribe for more stories of calm women, quiet truth, and the kind of justice that arrives without shouting.